All right, everybody, welcome back for another deep dive. You ready to get into it today?
Let's do it.
So today we're going to be talking about how to stay lean. And for the long haul, not just like, a temporary thing. We're talking about year-round, feeling and look great. And we're going to talk about a really great YouTube video I found from Joe Delaney.
Oh, yeah, Joe Delaney, he's great, really practical advice. It's not just a bunch of, hype.
Yeah, exactly. And I think one of the first things that stood out to me was, he's talking about this idea of like shredded versus lean. It's like they're not the same thing, are they?
Not at all. And he actually points out right away that shredded, which, a lot of people think that's the goal to get like super low body fat, that's actually really hard to maintain. And it can come with some bad side effects.
Like what kind of side effects are we talking?
Yeah, it mentions like low energy mood swings, even like problems with libido.
Oh, okay. So maybe not so great.
Not so appealing.
So then what is lean then? What's we talking about there?
Lean is more like a balance, a healthy level of body fat. You can still see the muscles, but, it's something you can maintain without going to extremes.
So it's like you can actually live your life and enjoy it and, not feel like you're, depriving yourself all the time.
Exactly. It's sustainable. It's about feeling good, too. Not just looking good.
Right. Feeling good is huge. And okay, this is where things get really interesting to me. Delaney says that building muscle is like essential to staying lean. And I feel like a lot of people think, oh, I want to get lean. I just got to like cut my calories and do a ton of cardio.
Right. Yeah. Just like starve yourself and run on the treadmill all day long.
Right. Like, is that what we should be doing?
No, not at all. He's all about the muscle building, and it actually makes sense scientifically, too.
Really? Tell me more about that.
So muscle burns more calories than fat even when you're resting. So the more muscle you have, the higher your metabolism is. So you're kind of like a calorie burning machine even when you're not working out.
Oh, okay. So it's like having a little furnace inside of you that's just burning calories all the time. That sounds amazing.
Pretty much, yeah, like upgrading your engine to be more fuel efficient.
I like that. I like that. Okay, so muscle is key. Got it. But then there's the diet part. Everybody wants to know, like, what do I eat to stay lean? Is he advocating for some crazy restrictive diet?
It's funny. He's actually a proponent of what's called intuitive eating, which I know it sounds kind of like you can eat whatever you want, but it's not quite that simple.
Yeah, I was going to say that sounds too good to be true.
It does, but he explains it as like developing more awareness of your body's signals. Like
Yeah.
you learn to tell the difference between real hunger and just like emotional eating or boredom.
So it's about getting better at listening to your body.
Yeah, exactly. And, figuring out which foods actually keep you feeling full and satisfied without overdoing it on the calories.
Okay, so it's not about counting every single calorie or like obsessing over macros or something like that.
Not really. I mean, it's more of a skill you develop over time. You start to pay attention to how different foods make you feel physically and mentally.
So it's a more holistic approach.
Definitely. Yeah. And,
Right.
speaking of holistic, he talks about energy levels too, which I think is really important.
Right. He doesn't just focus on the physical aspects
Yeah.
of being lean, but really it's like, how do you feel overall?
Exactly. And he's really big on energy because, if you're always feeling tired and drained, it's hard to make good choices. It's hard to stick with your workouts.
Right. It's like you get in this negative cycle where you're tired, so you don't work out, so you eat bad food, so you're even more tired.
Exactly. So it's like, how do you break out of that cycle?
Yeah. What's his advice?
He says, don't just focus on calories in, calories out. You got to look at your sleep, your stress levels, nutrition, hormone imbalances. All of that plays a role.
So it's about looking at the bigger picture.
Yeah, because when you have energy, it's like everything else falls into place. You're more motivated to work out, to cook healthy meals, to just take care of yourself.
You're more likely to actually do the things you know you need to do.
Exactly. And it's like a positive feedback loop. You feel good, so you do good, and then you feel even better. And I love how he connects this to finding exercise you actually enjoy.
Oh, yeah. He's not about forcing yourself to do something you hate. He says, you got to find something you look forward to.
Totally. And he has this great example of like playing sports. You're so focused on the game, you don't even realize you're working out.
Right. And I think that's a really important takeaway for everyone. What are some things that you enjoy that you could turn into a regular workout?
Yeah, that could be dancing, hiking, swimming, anything, get creative.
Right. Find something that makes you excited to move your body. And that's actually something that we can all think about. Like, what are those activities for us that we really enjoy?
Absolutely.
All right. So we've covered a lot of ground here in part one of our deep dive into staying lean with Joe Delaney. We talk about the difference between shredded and lean, the importance of building muscle, how to make intuitive eating work for you. But we're just getting started.
That's right. In part two, we're going to delve even deeper into Delaney's strategies, including what to do when you hit a plateau and how to stay motivated when life throws you a curveball.
So stay tuned for that.
Welcome back for part two of our deep dive into staying lean with Joe Delaney.
Yeah, so we left off talking about, finding workouts that you enjoy, which I think is huge. But, even when you find things you love, there's going to be times when you hit a plateau.
Yeah.
We all experience those plateaus. So what's Delaney's advice for pushing past those and, continuing to see progress?
He's really big on this principle called progressive overload.
Okay, and for people who aren't, fitness experts, can you explain what that means?
Sure. So basically, it means that you're constantly challenging your muscles by gradually increasing the weight or the reps or the intensity of your workouts. Because if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, your body adapts and you just stop growing.
So you got to keep your body guessing a little bit.
Exactly. And he uses this analogy of like climbing a ladder, to get to the next rung, you got to step up. You can't just stay on the same rung forever.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, that makes total sense. But, life is not a linear progression, right? Like things happen, you get stressed, you're traveling, maybe you're just not feeling it. Like, how do you stay on track when things aren't perfect?
Well, I think the first thing is to acknowledge that, like, yeah, life's going to get in the way, things are going to happen. It's not realistic to expect to be perfect all the time.
So don't beat yourself up if you miss a workout or have a cheat meal or something.
Exactly. And he actually says that striving for perfection can actually be counterproductive because it can lead to burnout and make you more likely to just give up.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So what's the alternative then? Like, how do we navigate those bumps in the road?
He talks about shifting your mindset to focus on progress, not perfection. So,
Yeah.
making healthy choices most of the time, but giving yourself grace when you slip up.
So finding that balance between consistency and flexibility.
Exactly. And just being kind to yourself. Recognizing that you're human, you're not going to be perfect.
Okay, I love that. And, we've talked a lot about the physical aspects of staying lean,
Yeah.
the diet, the exercise, progressive overload.
Yeah.
But what about the mental game? Like, how do you stay motivated? How do you avoid getting discouraged?
This is where it gets really interesting. I think he talks about finding your why.
Your why.
Yeah, your reason for wanting to stay lean. And it has to be deeper than just like wanting to look good in a swimsuit. It's like, what's driving you? Is it to improve your health, to boost your confidence, to have more energy to play with your kids?
So it's about connecting to a deeper purpose.
Exactly. And when you have a strong why, it's a lot easier to stay motivated, even when you're, having cravings or you're just not feeling up to working out.
Gives you that extra push.
It does, and it helps you reframe the whole journey. It's not about punishment or deprivation. It's about making choices that align with your values and, support your overall well-being.
I like that a lot. And, we've talked about the physical and the mental, but he also touches on something else that I think is really important, and that's the social aspect.
Oh, yeah. What does he say about that?
He talks about the importance of surrounding yourself with supportive people who share your values.
That's so key because, let's face it, it's really hard to stay on track if you're constantly being tempted, with unhealthy foods, or you're around people who just don't understand what you're trying to do.
Right? It's like you need that support system.
Totally. It's like finding your tribe, people who lift you up and encourage you to be your best self.
This is really resonating with me. It's about so much more than just what you eat or how much you exercise. It's about creating this whole lifestyle that supports your well-being in all areas of your life.
Absolutely. And it's about, finding what works for you, making sustainable changes and, enjoying the process.
Well said. All right, so why don't we wrap up this deep dive in part 3, where we'll explore Delaney's strategies for, celebrating your wins, dealing with setbacks, and, making this a truly sustainable way of life.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into staying lean with Joe Delaney. And, we've talked about so much already, everything from, the physical stuff, the diet, the exercise, to the mental game, finding your why, surrounding yourself with the right people.
Yeah, it's really holistic, isn't it? It's not just about like one thing you have to do. It's about, creating this whole lifestyle that supports you.
Exactly. And speaking of feeling supported, Delaney talks about celebrating your wins.
Yeah.
And I think this is so important. We can get so caught up in like what we haven't accomplished yet that we forget to like acknowledge how far we've come.
Yeah, totally. And it's those little wins that really keep you motivated, whether it's like hitting a new PR in the gym or resisting that donut at work or just, feeling more confident in your clothes. It's like those are all things worth celebrating.
Yeah, it's about focusing on what you have done instead of what you haven't done yet.
Right. And it reinforces those positive habits. The more you celebrate those wins, the likely you are to stick with it.
I love that.
Yeah.
So instead of beating yourself up for, maybe having a slip up, it's like, okay, let's focus on all the good stuff that I'm doing.
Totally. And, speaking of slip ups, let's be real. They're going to happen. Nobody's perfect. We all fall off track sometimes. So, how does Delaney suggest we deal with those setbacks?
Yeah, that's a good question because it's easy to get discouraged, when you mess up.
He actually says to view setbacks as learning opportunities, not failures.
Okay, that's easier said than done though, right?
It can be, but instead of dwelling on the guilt and the frustration, he says, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? Maybe you overindulged at a party instead of beating yourself up. Try to figure out what triggered that behavior. Were you stressed? Were you just surrounded by tempting food? Were you just caught up in the moment?
It's like being a detective almost.
Exactly. Yeah, figure out the why behind the slip up, and then you can come up with a plan to handle it differently next time.
So it's like turning those failures into fuel for future success.
I like that. Yeah, it's about using those experiences to refine your approach.
I love Delaney's approach.
Yeah.
It's so positive.
Yeah.
It's about taking ownership of your choices and using every experience, both good and bad, to move you closer to your goals.
Yeah, it's about constantly evolving and growing, becoming the best version of yourself.
Well, I think this has been an incredibly insightful deep dive into, Joe Delaney's philosophy on staying lean. I feel like I have a whole new perspective now on what it really means to be, lean and healthy.
Me too. It's not about punishing yourself or, striving for some crazy ideal. It's about making sustainable changes that make you feel good.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Finding what works for you, building those healthy habits, and enjoying the journey.
And ultimately feeling good in your own skin.
That's it. That's the key takeaway.
Yeah.
So to all of our listeners out there who are on their own journeys, to staying lean, remember Delaney's advice. Don't just aim to look good, aim to feel good. Couldn't have said it better myself. And that wraps up another episode of The Deep Dive. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep diving deep.